And we're back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Some technical difficulties. I'll try and remember where we were at.
We were talking.
I'll just start. I'll just start talking about drink and draw.
Okay.
Because I think that's important. This table that we're sitting at is where drink and draw happens at the Goodfoot on Sunday nights, and I started coming. I don't know how long it's been happening. At least 6 or 7 years, maybe. But when I first moved up to Portland, I didn't really know. I was just working by myself, and I didn't really know that many artists. And 1999, 2000, I started painting a lot after about almost a 5-year break when I was living in Eugene. And I started getting some shows and showing at the Goodfoot here, and my first 2 shows here were collaborations with my friend in Seattle. She's one of my, I know from I met her at the art supply store in Eugene, actually, and one of my art materials nerd friends, and we had talked about collaborating a lot. And then in 2004 we did 14 2-foot by 2-foot paintings in a 72-hour period. And basically I think we figured that we painted about 60 hours out of the 72 hours.
Wow.
And we just set everything out, and we didn't even really talk about what we were going to do. I just showed up with a bunch of materials, and she had a bunch of materials, spread things out in her studio, and just started going for it. And we paint, everybody, I don't know, everybody, both of us, we would just pick up a piece and start doing backgrounds, and then it would go to the side to dry, and then we'd pick up another one, and then we had a lot of found images, and we were drawing some of those images and collaging some stuff, and then eventually we'd just start kind of riffing off of what each other were doing. It was really eclectic. We had breakdancers, and we had octopus, and a shark jumping out of the water to eat a bird, but there was also bunch of stencils of like delivery trucks in the background, and it was really surreal and weird, but I really liked how everybody would still bring narrative and then interpret. I'd be like, a lot of these make sense, but I can't figure out the shark, like all that stuff just doesn't make sense to me. And people would be like, oh no, it's consumerism, because there's a gas pump and there's trucks and the shark just consumes. Or somebody else would be like, oh, well, there's all these big 4x4 truck, but nature still makes a shark, which is more badass than a truck. And I'll be like, oh, okay, I guess you can paint anything, and somebody's gonna go, I get it.
Right.
So we did those shows here in 2004 and 2005, and then I started meeting other artists that show here. And when back to the drink and draw, when the drink and draw started here, I would just come down and hang out. That's when I met a lot of the artists that are now my best Portland artist friends. It's a good community. Now I know I could probably write a list of 50 artists in Portland that I know, but it took a little while to build that, and that's really thanks to this space and meeting. I met Chris Haberman when he did his first show here the same year that I did my show, and he started doing the Big 100 show, and he invited me to do that, and then I just sort of ended up in
that little group,
in that circle of doing shows with Chris and doing shows with Jason, and then now they're teamed up doing here in People's Art of Portland downtown, which is where I met you. I know we've said a couple of these things twice, but
no, that's okay. Chris
Haberman
Chris Haberman has done so much for me. He's introduced me to so many artists, who in turn have introduced me to so many artists, and like I'm sure I know I've said this before, but the very first gallery that I went to, like the first week that I was in Portland, was People's Art Gallery, and I was like, man, this place is so rad. If I were gonna show anywhere, I would want it to be here.
Yeah, good.
And I was a part of the Big 400 and the Big 500,
great.
and I just love it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. So I drew from the time I was a kid. I started painting when I was in college in printmaking. I started painting in 2000, fairly prolific and showing in Portland. Now I'm sort of coming back around to the printmaking thing.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I've been carving some linoleum prints. That's what I did this year and last year for the Big 400 and the Big 500. Is I carved 8x8 block prints and then printed them onto our panels.
Nice.
And I've done a few larger pieces that went along with my show last year. This year I did some, not a lot. I printed these coasters for the show.
That's really rad.
And this one with the antlers. Just to have a little swag to throw around. But I would like to, even though I'm emulating that style with these, and I'm definitely using some similar techniques, I would like to do some actual like woodblock prints, where I'm carving the wood panel and inking different colors, and I'll probably continue with this style. I mean, I really meant with this series, but the style is interesting, and I don't know, I should talk about that a little bit, because I went a few years without showing here at the Goodfoot, and I don't remember when we got into the discussion, but I was hanging out at Jason's frame shop studio, and he just mentioned that the reason that he hadn't scheduled me for a show in a while is just my style is too unpredictable. He said he just did it not necessarily in a bad way, but in the sense that he wasn't really sure who to book me with.
Right. Okay.
Because I would get paired with other artists, and then I would try something new, and then I've got a bunch of abstract faces in a show with a bunch of the other three artists are doing like illustrative type work.
Right.
So now what we do is he saw some of these pieces before we booked the show. And the last year, the volcano pieces we saw, you know, I showed him what I had been working on. He's like, oh, this is great. Let's do this series. And then we try to, you know, match it with artists in a similar style. And that's one reason I like to work in a series like this is I'm trying something new, but I have a lot of that something new that I can play around with. So it's predictable
at least within that series.
Yeah. And they don't always work together, but that just comes from me being. I mean, it's just being too many things to be interested in. You know, it's not that obviously I have an attention span that I can focus on the same thing for a while, but then I also want to try something. I want to try something different.
So do it until it wears itself out, and then move on.
Right. Well, yeah, and also to take what I can from that.
Right.
You know, maybe it's not the style that I want to do for the rest of my art career, but there's some elements that I'll learn that will, you know, work their way in. Like this series, for example, and the last series, I started doing more like figurative illustration and a lot of line work. Which is something I hadn't done as much. I'd done some kind of outline, sort of cartoon like characters for some robots and other things like that I was selling at like craft fairs and that sort of thing, and some of the group shows here that I wanted. You know, I wanted like I had some that were just like these robots that were in the desert looking at their hands, like existential robots was sort of my idea. And that was I like doing the line work and I like the drawing, but then in a lot of my paintings, the stenciled dots and the stripes and the filling, the layering of pattern and color texture is something that's